This is a story about people and water and our connection to the North Saskatchewan River. After the Ice Age and after glacial Lake Edmonton drained away, families and communities made their camps throughout the valley of a much higher North Saskatchewan River. As the river carved out its path over the centuries, it created flats throughout the valley. Over hundreds of generations, people adjusted to follow the receding riverbank so they could continue pitching their camps close to the water. They left ongoing traces of their lives, reminders of their presence in these terraces along this river. In the 20th and 21st centuries, Edmonton's water and wastewater treatment plants were established in the river valley for the same reason, to be close to the water. Over time, we've become increasingly aware of those ancient footprints and of our responsibility to respect and to understand them. Water management is of central importance to a healthy community. This is the story of how we have managed it over the centuries. Fast forward from the post-Ice Age camps to the fur trade. Long before this particular flat was a neighborhood called Rossdale. One of the early shout-outs to water in the Fort Edmonton Post-Journals was the Great Flood of 1825. A once-in-a-century flood that just seems to have a habit of making an appearance at least 2 or 3 times every century. About 5 years later, after rebuilding into a smaller fort, a second once-in-a-century flood washed it right off the flat for good. The problem is, it pushed folks even further from the river, with a much bigger hill to climb, and a lot more labor required to get water up to the fort. In 1862, the fort's Métis carpenters constructed an ingenious water railway, some kind of contraption on stilts. The water railway didn't last long. Likely got washed out in the flood of 1864. That same flood washed gold miners out of the river valley and up into the fort, where they were put to work digging a well over 75 feet deep as an alternative to the water railway. Pulling water up 75 vertical feet, one pail at a time, gets old pretty fast. So something had to change. By the 1880s, no method was more tried and true than a reliable horse, ox, or mule backing into the North Saskatchewan to fill up a water cart. Like this one on display at Fort Edmonton Park. The Irishman, John Foley, was the unofficial engineer of the Hudson Bay Company's Waterworks department. Foley, a brother-in-law of Chief Pappas Chase, was a partner in the fort's water management, along with his trustworthy ox. Together, they served the needs of Fort Edmonton throughout the 1880s. Nearly 140 years later, one of Foley's descendants still plays a role in the story of water management.
So John Foley would be my great-great-great-grandfather, I believe. Kind of a pretty cool roundabout way of coming back down through the generations, and all of a sudden I'm down here at the river and helping EPCOR to manage the work that they're doing to upgrade the services to give good water to the people of Edmonton. And it's always funny how the way the world connects us and brings us to this place.
While the fort's water infrastructure was driven by ox power, the new Edmonton settlement was proud to announce that the city waterworks was now run by mule power at 5 cents a pail. Settler Donald McLeod took the initiative to launch Edmonton's first civic waterworks department, along with a creature so important to the village that it was known even in its lifetime as Edmonton's historic mule. Everything changed for Edmonton in the late fall of 1891 when a group of local businessmen incorporated the Edmonton Electric Light and Power Company. The men had a vision to bring Edmonton into the 19th century by providing it with power, and then light, and then eventually with non-mule supplied water. The electric power plant was built down on the banks of the North Saskatchewan for the same reason that people camped in this valley 10,000 years ago, to be close to the water. Power machinery required steam engines. Steam engines needed water. To ensure a steady supply of water, no matter how much the river might rise or fall, the electric light company brought in dynamite to blast out a new well. With dynamite, who needs gold miners? Edmonton reached a milestone just in time for Christmas 1891. When the sun went down, first light came to the village with a pull of a switch. Everyone was convinced that it was a great improvement over oil lamps. Hotels hung colored lamps over their doors, bringing a festive glow to the village. Edmonton was so proud of its electric light that the following month it incorporated as a town. But while the town had joined the modern era of light and electricity, it was still managing water the old way. Horses backing into the North Saskatchewan, and the waterman, George Moore, hauling his barrels up the steep hill, rain, snow, sleet, or hail. The good news was that by being so close to the river, the electric light company was in a splendid position to start thinking about the next chapter in water management beyond oxen, mules, or gold miners with shovels. The bad news was the flood of 1899. For power station number 1, it was the end of the line. The North Saskatchewan River reminded us yet again who was really in charge of this place. The water was so high you couldn't see the pillars of the new low-level bridge construction. It might have been that afternoon that folks standing on the edge of the riverbank started wondering if there might not be a better spot to deliver water and power. When the floodwater subsided, citizens were delighted to see that the piers of the low-level bridge were still standing and work was able to continue. But they raised the bridge another 8 feet higher, just in case we ever had another once-in-a-century flood. The gentlemen of the Electric Light and Power Company relinquished control of utilities over to the town. Plans were made for a new combined power and water station on slightly higher ground, on the Ross Flat, Rossdale. Pretty much on the exact spot where the early Fort Edmonton and Fort Augusta stood side by side a century earlier. Edmonton's new municipal power and water plant was quickly outgrown by an exploding population. And so the city hired its brightest architect to build a new pump house. The pumping station of 1909 featured some lovely ornamental details. But even before its roof was on, the whole building started to crack apart on all sides. By keeping it propped up with poles and trees, the walls held together long enough to head back to the drawing board. With the help of a few buttresses and a lot of concrete, the building was in shipshape, just in time for the flood of 1915. This time, the river crested at an all-time high of 45 feet above normal level. By now, the low-level bridge was a veteran of floods, but it took a battering with a steady supply of buildings and former steamboats smashing away at its upstream side. The Canadian Northern Railway came to the rescue by parking a fully loaded train on the bridge to keep it from washing away. Despite the power plant taking on water in the flood of 1915, it kept on chugging, and it's been chugging along ever since. Water management is a work in progress, and we grow in stages to adapt with changing times. Our facilities now provide clean, safe, award-winning water to 1.3 million Albertans. Construction of flood berms around our water treatment facilities will ensure the drinking water that people rely on will be protected from the next flood and all the ones after that. The banks of the North Saskatchewan are a many-layered place in Alberta history. From post-Ice Age camps to oxen and mules to wells and water railways, our modern water treatment and wastewater treatment plants are the latest chapter in an ongoing story of people and water.
We're pretty fortunate in a day and time where technology's been so advanced that we can go from our living room, just stand up and walk to the kitchen and just turn that little tap on and we have instant water. And we forget how much of a chore it was. It was a big part of your day to make sure that you had water accessible in your home. I can only imagine what it was like in the days it was minus 45 and you had to go and find that water, or sit and have a pot and melt it by the fire just to have something to access, to be able to use, cook, clean, drink.